I'm on a whole new
Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at our nearest neighbor in space, the moon. So let's get started. What is the moon? Well, the moon is composed of rock and it is considered a natural satellite of the Earth. It is actually one of more than 96 moons in our solar system, but it is the only moon for our planet Earth. Location, location, location. Now, in terms of distance from Earth to the moon, it's about 384,000 kilometers or 240,000 miles. That's a nice little journey. In terms of size, it's about 3,468 kilometers or 2,155 miles in diameter. This is from end to end. And that's about a quarter the size of the Earth. The moon's surface. Now, the moon features no atmosphere, no liquid water, and the temperatures out there can be a bit extreme on the surface of the moon. Daytime, it's about 130 degrees Celsius or 265 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas nighttime is a little bit colder, and that's about negative 190 degrees Celsius or negative 310 degrees Fahrenheit. And this represents 1/6 of Earth's gravity, so it has a much lower gravity than Earth. Now, the moon features surface features. One is craters, and they can be as big as 2,500 kilometers or 1,553 miles across. And most are believed to be formed by meteorite impact that occurred on the moon. Although there are some that may have been formed by volcanic action inside of the moon. Lunar features. Maria. Now, it's originally thought to be seized by early astronomers. It's the darkest parts of the lunar landscape. And there's a thought that it's filled by lava after crash of huge meteorites on lunar surface that were believed to occur 3 to 4 billion years ago. And it contains mostly basalt rock. Now, as we talk about the moon, I want to introduce you to the moon phases. Moonlight is reflected sunlight. Half the moon's surface is always reflecting light. From Earth, we see different amounts of the moon's lit surface. The amount seen is called a phase. Now, I'm going to go into the next slide, and I'm going to end up talking about this word phase and the reflection of light, because I think that there needs to be an understanding before we go forward into talking about phases. Now, to reiterate, the moon does not make any light of its own. The lighted parts that we see are called phases. The moon reflects light from the sun. It does not produce its own light. And what we see as light is called phases. So there are 4 main shapes to the moons that you'll see when we talk about the 8 phases of the moon. They include full, crescent, quarter, and gibbous. And we'll get into more of a discussion about these as I go through further in the presentation. Now, on average, it takes about 29 and a half days, almost 1 month, for the moon to completely revolve around the Earth. To move around, meaning revolve around the Earth. Now, as the moon moves or revolves around the Earth, it looks like it has different shapes. The shapes of the moon does not really change. Doesn't change. It just changes its location in space. So we have new, waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full, waning, and so on. So let's get started taking a closer look at these moon phases. During a new moon, the moon looks dark. As the surface of the moon that we see gets bigger, we say that the moon is waxing. This is therefore called a waxing crescent. When the moon is a quarter of the way around the Earth, it is in its first quarter phase. We see it as half lit. This is a waxing quarter moon. After the quarter moon, the moon is moving towards a full moon. We call this a waxing gibbous moon. Notice that the bright part of the moon is getting larger. That's what we mean by the word waxing. It's getting larger. Now it's time for a full moon. The entire face of the moon that we are able to see shines during the full moon. Now that the moon is three-fourths of the way around the earth, it seems to be half lit. We call this a waning quarter moon. Following the full moon, the surface of the moon seems to be getting smaller. We call this a waning moon. This is a waning gibbous moon. Waning meaning getting smaller. Before we get to the new moon, we see a sliver of a moon shining up in the sky. This is a waning crescent. Now, new moon. The moon is not visible from Earth. The moon is between the sun and the earth. The dark side is facing us. This phase lasts only one night. Waxing crescent. Once again, waxing means that the brightest side is increasing. The right side is the bright side. Less than one half of the moon is illuminated. This phase includes any visible moon from a small sliver, to almost half. Waxing crescent. First quarter or half moon. The entire right side of the moon is illuminated. The moon looks like a half circle. The illuminated side is increasing. This phase only lasts one night. First quarter or half moon. Waxing gibbous. Gibbous means that more than one half is visible, but it is not quite full. This phase includes the night after the first quarter to the night before the full moon. Waxing gibbous. Full moon. The moon is full and bright. It looks like a large circle. The illuminated side is facing us. This only happens one night per lunation. Full moon. Waning gibbous. The moon appears more than half, but not quite full. Waning means that the illuminated side is decreasing or getting smaller. The left side is the bright side. Waning gibbous. Last quarter or half moon. Left half of the moon is illuminated. The illuminated side is decreasing. This phase also only lasts for one night. Last quarter or half moon. Waning crescent. Less than one half of the moon is illuminated. The moon will continue to become smaller and smaller. Waning crescent. The phases of the moon in a nutshell. Remember that the moon phases last about 29 days, and what you are seeing is a reflection of the sun's light on the moon's surface over the course of these 29 days. The moon does not create its own light, but merely reflects the light of the sun. Now, lunar eclipses. I'll talk about that briefly because I will talk about that later in another presentation. Now, this occurs when the moon moves into Earth's shadow. This shadow darkens the moon, forming these areas called the umbra and penumbra, which will be further discussed later on. There are about 2 or 3 of them that occur per year, and they last up to 4 hours. Lunar eclipses. Solar eclipses. The moon moves between the earth and the sun, and the moon therefore casts a shadow on part of the earth. Total eclipses are rare, only once every 360 years from one location. Let's go ahead and try naming this phase. Take a look at it. I think it should be pretty obvious. You're right, it is the full moon. What time does this phase rise and set? Good question. All right, name these features. This feature, hopefully you guessed it, is indeed craters. And there's another feature that I was going to have you name, but hopefully you know that that's what Maria looks like. This completes our presentation on the moon and moon phases.